is actively involved in technology projects executed at RRC. On behalf of our department and my own behalf, I welcome you once again, sir. Thank you.
I invite our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Rajesh Kumar sir, to take this section. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to see everyone with fresh faces. Thank you for joining today. I think you had a very good time yesterday with Krishna Kumar sir giving the latest technologies in 5G, private networks, and both the metaverse and other stuff. So today, we are going to do we're going to talk about a very interesting topic about data management and the advancements in data management and cloud technology. I hope you are also excited to know something more about it. So I think today the world is full of data, right? So wherever we just operate with a mobile phone or any electronic gadget, when we operate, the data is getting collected continuously, right? So when I keep speaking, when someone is recording, the data is getting recorded somewhere. And so you have, the world is completely blown away with the kind of data that we are gathering and storing. So does it really make sense actually? So how are you going to make sense of all these data that we are collecting on a daily basis, 24/7 for all these years? The data is keep growing, somewhere we are storing, and we don't know where exactly it is getting stored, and how are we going to make use of all the data that we are collecting on a regular, every second by second basis. So that's what we are going to talk about. What is data? How are we going to use that data that we are collecting in various fields in our computing technology as well? So what is data management? Do you have any idea about it? Just a term, can anyone volunteer to tell it? Structured data. So what do you mean by structured data? Just a little about it. What is structured data?
Collecting unprocessed data and passing it through data.
Wonderful answer. Thank you. So which we've been using a lot of mobile apps. We've been using it. So where do you think which one app which is storing huge amounts of data actually, which on a day-to-day basis that you are encountering? Can you just think of any app where large amount of data is getting stored and processed and all this stuff? I think if you have an app, I think for sure there are a lot of apps you have, right? So one thing is, YouTube is one thing where huge amount of data is getting collected and it is getting stored in millions of data centers actually. Right? So today the agenda is we are just going to talk about what is data management, what are the different aspects of data management, the advancements in data management, the advancements in cloud technology, because cloud has been for years now. What is something that has come out new, And finally, we have some question answers in this section. So let's keep it simple, but it's going to be a lot of information. And let's try to be as simple as possible. Yeah, go to the next one, please. So yeah, so what is data management? It's an end-to-end process actually. So as Sunil mentioned, so first you get the source of the data. So data comes from different channels, right? So you have any electronic gadget, it comes from different channels. And then you ingesting the data. You're just putting the data inside to any so that it gets stored in your hardware device or some file system. Somewhere you're just ingesting the data. Then you're going to check the quality of the data, see how much, because it's all, there can be a human feed. Not many systems are fully automated. There can be some junk data which might not be useful. For example, if I have to use the data has to be some meaning, right? So whatever the data that I want to consume. So we are going to check the quality of the data, what kind of data that I want to have, and then processing the data. So you need to process the data so that you can just have some logic behind it and you can just process it. And finally, you're storing the data and transforming the data to next format so that it is more readable. And finally, you generate reports out of it. So for example, if you just take a Microsoft Excel, you just insert your all the mark sheets for all the subjects that you have mark sheets if you enter. Then you can always have a pie chart, some reports you can just bring it out of it and say that okay, these are the top 10 students who have scored good in this particular subject. Something like that, you can just have different reports, right? So for that, the data has to be proper. If the data is not ingested, if there are some gaps in the data, those things we will be checking in the data quality checks, and the processing of data you will be checking that, so that your reporting and analytics are good and it's very informative. This helps in decision making. So all the businesses today in the world, they need to make instantaneous decisions. They need to, it's a real-time decision making. When the data keeps coming in, they need to figure out is this the right data or is this the quality data that we need to have. For example, what I would say is, if we are going to a bank to get a loan, so they need to know are you really a good person, are you a person who is worthy enough to repay the loan back, right? I cannot give a person who doesn't have a proper bank balance and whose repaying capacity is not that. But I need to give a loan. Only if I give a loan, my business will go through. So for that, what they do is, today we have a CIBIL score. If you just go, there is a CIBIL score which talks about how much risk each and every customer has in the bank, based on the transactions you do with the bank. So when you just apply a loan, what the bank does is, it will just enter the loan processing system, it will just enter your details that you have given. Immediately, the output will be a score that is assigned to you. So based on that, they will just tell you how much I can pay you, or is it really a guy, or what? They will also check my background actually. I cannot have a very bad background. When I'm doing all the model practices, I cannot come and ask for a loan. They should check the authenticity of myself will all be taken care, and then only they will be able to. This all should happen instantaneous. If there is a lag, then the customer will go to the next time. So that's the challenge we have today. And all these things, data management takes care of it. And why should we do this? Yeah, we talked about it. Because of the accurate decisions we have to take. So I cannot just do a small mistake by giving a loan to a person who doesn't have any background or who cannot repay anything. Actually, I'm going to lose my money. Productivity. Again, the time, how many loans I can disperse in a given day, how many loans I can give it to the system, so that my margins, profit margins gets increased. And cost efficiency. When the data is managed properly, you won't be having silos of data. Actually. You won't have duplicates of data. You'll be just having a single layer of data, and it will be cost effective so that the response time, the information that you want back is quite less. Within a second or within a few microseconds, you should be getting it. That's how the data has to be stored. And reduce the data loss. So whatever the data that we capture, if the data is properly stored in a proper way, so we don't know when that particular data will be useful or not useful, right? So for that, to reduce the data loss, all these things are quite important actually. How do you structure the data? How do you store the data? What is the quality of the data? So these are the main things. And security risks. So how do I store the data so that it's secure? So you give all your personal details to them. You give your phone number, you give your Aadhaar card details. Everything is there with the consumer, with the bank or whoever it is. So all your personal details are there. For some reason, if the data is not stored properly, if the security is not taken care, you are just taken for a ride. You just have, if you have a credit card, and if the credit card information is not stored properly, if it's not encrypted properly with the right algorithms, then there are a lot of people who are very much into hacking. They easily do that. People are just employed to hack the personal information. So security is the major thing, and we just have to take care of how secure the data is getting stored. And finally, the operational readiness. How ready my data is available for me to consume it. So there can be any kind of demand coming to the business in any different format. For example, if there will be Amazon, I take this Amazon Prime Day sale. There will be a lot of sales, Diwali sale, and all those stuff. Right? So how much the Amazon team will keep their data ready so that they can give the offers. They can just say that okay, I think the demand is more for the electronic gadgets. So let me give a lot of discounts to the electronic gadgets so that I can sell more of those products. And so I make use of that opportunity. So for that, the data has to be stored properly. It has to be stored properly. It has to be operational ready. It can't be just in a diverse way. So that I have to go check everything. I have to read everything. So that's going to take a lot of time. So the way you are storing the data, the amount of time you are getting the data back. So that is something which you need to take care so that your business is operational ready. Whenever any request comes in, you just have to do it. So today they ask who are the best students in computer science department who are more interested in IoT. I think the data is there, somewhere they have collected that okay, these students are interested in IoT. I can directly pull them to the project that I'm going to do tomorrow. And I can talk to them actually. But rather if the data is not ready, we just go and we have to talk to each and every person, understand what their interest is. So that's going to take a lot of time and I cannot wait for till that time. So that's something that talks about the operational readiness. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this is the key parts in the management, data management process. It's just a pictorial representation that we talked about. So we just have to, the data architecture. So how the database systems, we all know about a relational database like Oracle or Microsoft Access and MySQL or PostgreSQL. For unstructured data, we have MongoDB. I think many people have done many projects with our college. So how are we going to architect the data actually? How are we going to store the data elements? How are we going to, how many columns we are going to have? So these are all comes under the architecture actually. And what are the types of data? Whether it's a character data or a numeric data, how much length that we are going to give. So this is something about the architecture that we have to design. Then the data models actually. So this is I think we should have learned about the ER diagrams, entity relationship models actually, the first normal form, second normal form, third normal form. So it has to be in a way, and again it depends upon the business that we are going to do it. For an online transaction processing, your data elements you need to design the data differently. For online analytical processing, the data elements have to be designed differently. So this data model, how are we going to do it? So there is a master data, there is a transaction data, there is always the lookup tables actually where you need to look up the static data actually, right? So am I making some sense out of this? Is it, you're able to understand something? So if you're going to take a business bank for example, HDFC Bank. So my master data is the customer data actually. So my details will be the master data. And the transaction data is if I go swipe my credit card, or if I go give a check to my customer, so that's a transaction data. That's going to change on a daily basis. But master data is going to be forever. Unless I change my address from Rajapalayam to Srivilliputtur, the master data might not change frequently, but the transaction data will change on a regular basis. So we need to have a parent-child relationship to that actually, right? So that has to be established in the data models. And then the data which is generated and processed in the database, and where exactly the storage comes into picture actually. It can be in the database, it can be a flat files, it can be in cloud object storage, and yeah, in the other JSON formats. There are multiple formats that have come today, and where exactly the data can be stored so that it can be fetched easily. And again, it differs from every domain to domain, right? So, and the next one is data from different transaction systems and other sources. And how are we going to integrate the data? This is again a big problem. So the integration of data. So, for example, I'll take the. You can just mute the person who is. So how are we going to integrate the data, right? So in a bank, if you see, I deposit the amounts, right? Whatever the savings salary I get, I deposit in the bank. And the other one is loans I get. I get the other. So the depositing, there is a system for bank deposits, current account and savings account. Everyone should be having it, right? Current account and savings account. So that's one system. And my loans or credit cards is a different system. And the current account and saving account, I'll be known as Rajesh. And in the credit card system, I'll be known as Rajesh Kumar in a different name as such actually. But only if I integrate these two data, I'll make some sense out of it actually, right? So that's very crucial. It's very important actually. So how are you going to integrate the data? So we cannot treat as two different customers, one in the current account, the other in the savings account, right? You need to treat me as one single customer to the bank. So that's where the data integration challenges comes into picture. We need to identify what are the data elements which are different in different systems. How are we going to integrate it actually? So that is something which we need to take in. And then the quality checks. We talked a lot about quality yesterday. So it is the most important in the data quality. Data might be in gigabytes or terabytes, but how quality it is actually. So I need some information for my reports, and if all those data is having null values, if the bank teller is not entering proper data, it's going to have null values actually. It will have blank data, which is not going to be useful to me in my reports. So how should I take care? What data elements are very crucial for my reports? You need to identify it. And if there is a value coming as null or a blank, how are you going to treat it? You should give some default values so that my processing takes care of it. So this is the quality checks actually. And the inconsistencies. For example, if if I'm expecting a alphabetic value, if some numeric value is coming, and that's an inconsistency because of the system they have actually. So you need to identify that actually. See the inconsistencies between the data and data cleansing and data massaging. So these are all very important. You have a lot of tools to do it. And how do we cleanse the data? How do we data massaging the data before actually we go into processing? And finally, the data governance. So data governance is something giving access to who should access what. What data is there? For example, you have your Aadhaar card details, you have your PAN card details. Everyone cannot access those details. You are giving left, right, and center to everyone whoever is asking. But how are they going to use that actually? So they cannot just sell your data and they cannot just make money out of it, right? So that's where the data governance comes into picture. So you need, ideally everywhere they'll just say terms and agreements, and after which they'll ask you the details. But we never bother about reading the terms and agreement. We'll just give the details and so that our work gets done, right? So that is something we have to figure out, and that is something the companies are, and the government is also working in the data governance. Which data has to be given, who has to access it? Not the people outside the country can access my personal data, but we don't know for what reason they're accessing. These are the key parts of the data management, and you should have some fair idea about all these things so that in your project you will be able to appreciate when you deal with the data that you have. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there are multiple data management happens at multiple levels. So we're going to talk about how the data is managed at the cloud-based level. For example, scalability. Again, I can take a Amazon Prime example. In the festival season, the traffic will be so huge in the websites actually, and you just have to scale the number of servers that it is supposed to offer to the client, right? So there the scalability comes into picture. You can just spin off the number of nodes that at any point in time based on the demand actually. At the same time, the next day when the traffic goes down, you just have to, it's kind of an elasticity. You just expand your resources that you are offering to the consumer. So that's, and again it's cost effective. You just, since it's cloud based, you don't need to sit, go through and just, the time is not required. You don't need to do a lot of work on it. Just spin off, and again it just takes, if you're just going to use those servers only for a few hours, they're just going to charge you only for that particular hours for your usage actually. Because tomorrow I don't want that server to be idle. I just want only for those 2 days where I'm offering the festive season. So that's when I need the data. So that's when I'm going to use the server. And again, so we have there's a lot of doubts about how sensitive if I put it in the cloud. Everyone is going to look at it actually. So that's the major thing where people are, the financial institutions in particular, they don't want to go to the cloud because we are not sure how private it is, how secure it is. So that's the thing. But that's where we still have a lot of solutions now because to address this particular data sensitivity and privacy issues. Artificial intelligence and machine learning. So that's the buzzword today. For any discussion, these two terms comes into picture. So how does this operate actually? So this machine learning and artificial intelligence, they don't have your natural intelligence. We need to feed the data actually. When you keep feeding the data, it's kind of learning. It's trying to, the models that we give, it will continuously learn. So the continuous learning, that's when the models get enriched actually, and that's when they give informed decisions. And because of how the data is getting stored and how the data is getting fed, based on the learning models we have, it will try to identify the patterns. It will try to identify using the algorithms that we give, and then the predictions come into picture actually. So this is what it is. That's the output they give. And the third one is data lakes and data warehouse and data integration. So data lakes, this is a very I think every big, not big, even a small company, they have a data lake because it's kind of a column. You can just dump the data of all the data that you're touching upon. So any kind of data, for example, if I have a Twitter account or if I have a Facebook account, if some customer is talking about my company saying that, hey, your product is not good, whatever the product that you're offering, I think there is some defect. I have to take that as a Facebook comment, I have to read that comment, I have to take that as an input to me actually, and I have to process it. So all these data related to my business, any kind of data, it can be a flat file, it can be from Facebook, it can be from a YouTube video, it can be an audio file, any kind of a data is dumped into data lake. So it's a huge column actually. And then this data warehouse is something, it's a smaller subset of data lake actually. So what information that I need and that I need to process, you just take the data that you need, you put it here, data warehouse, and you'll put all the, whatever we talked about, right? Like ingesting the data quality checks, cleansing the data, and then processing the data. All those things happen at the data warehouse. And data integration is one main thing, because there will be multiple sources in these two things. And how am I going to integrate the data? So I need to only, if I integrate, combine the data elements from different systems, I can make some sense out of it. I can make some meaningful information out of it. So it can be a structured data, as Sunil was mentioning. It reveals tables, relational tables, rows and columns, and unstructured data, just like comments in your YouTube actually, or comments in your Twitter account or a Facebook account. It's an unstructured data. So you just collect it, how are you going to store it? Kind of a database like MongoDB will help that. And then how are you going to integrate it, cleanse it and integrate it? Next slide, please. Yeah, so data privacy and security, very crucial thing, because we talk a lot about huge data elements. How am I going to keep this data private to myself, and how am I going to ensure that it's secure? So I think if you see, last year there were around 15 million data breaches, which means that there is a big group of hacking community which goes, it's a hobby for them to get into the servers and try to get the personal data and then just come and sell it to other people. That's their main business. So which means that my personal information is gone for a stake. Someone is going to use it and make money out of it. And so, yeah, sensitive PII data, it's personally identifiable data, like your Aadhaar card, PAN card, your phone number, your address, all the main details actually, personal details. There's a big community who can just go get the data out of it. So Yahoo, for example, it's the biggest data breach. It's had 3 billion user accounts breached. So it was totally in a mess. And I think last year there was a big data breach in Facebook and LinkedIn as well. Even though they have ensured that the security is to an optimal level, but still they'll find ways to get into the system, get the data, and try to make use of it. You also know that I think in elections, the Russian hackers will get into the US election servers and they'll try to get the details and try to mess around there as well. So how are we going to? So this is one of the biggest area where people can work about actually. People are concerned about data security and privacy, and what can we do to ensure that you give the confidence to the business that hey, my data, the data that I'm storing in my servers are fully secure. So that's where the encryption comes in. There's a lot of tools that by which we can ensure that the data is secure and private. The highest level of 256-bit encryption is there, end-to-end encryption is there. There's a lot of other things like multi-factor authentication. So these are the few things by which you can ensure that the data is secure. So if the data is not secure, if it's not private, then my business brand value is gone. So I'm not going to trust LinkedIn or Facebook and give all my details to these two platforms, whatever I want. Because they're going to take my data and they're going to use it. And when the customer confidence goes, the business will always go down. They're not going to thrive in the market. That's how it goes. The other main trend is self-service analytics. So since we have a lot of data collected, and we are mainly dependent on the IT team to come up with the information so that the business user can make sense out of it actually. So the business user community, they need to wait till the IT team does all this processing and then finally I consume it. And I can't wait till then actually. If I have to give a loan today to the customer who is sitting in front of me, I need to know that, okay, how good he is actually. So that's why self-service analytics is mainly for the business user community. And there we have enough, the tools that are supporting these will ensure that not much the IT team's involvement is required. They'll just generate the reports out of the data, and then finally they'll make the decisions based out of it. That's how it is. So it promotes collaboration. So a lot of business users can work with the data and they can come up with the reports which is required, and data democratization, which means that data can be used by different people in the bank. So yeah, so business users accessing the data, analyzing and generating reports for informed decision making. It cannot be done at all levels, but to an extent when we give this data democratization, it helps the business to go to the next level. Next slide, please. So data governance and compliance. So we talked about it. So I think because Twitter is an American company, Facebook is an American company, all the major Instagram is an American company, but they're all using Indian data actually, right? So a lot of governments are very scared to, because every government leader, they have a Twitter account, and those guys sitting outside India, they dictate terms what has to be published and what not to be published. So that's when I think even at the government level, they wanted to have a governance who can access the data actually, because all my data is getting stored in the servers which is stored in the US actually, which is stored in Europe. My personal data is stored in Europe and US, and we don't have any control over it, right? So that's when this data governance comes into picture. When we talk about when your companies, if you have to come and make some business here, come and keep your servers here actually. Have a data center in my India and just use, the data has to go through all your complete transaction. It should not go beyond India actually. It should not go beyond the borders. It has to be within my Indian territory, and we need to have a control over it. So that's where this data governance comes into picture. In the last parliament session, I think one of the major bill which was passed in the parliament is data protection bill. This was passed very recently in the last session. So what it tells is how your data can be privately secured, and who can access the data and who cannot access it. Again, with the European Union, again, so they have their own policies like General Data Protection Regulation Compliance. So how these personal data can be handled, who can access it, and the control over the systems is what this whole thing talks about. The next thing is data quality. Again, it's very crucial because we have all the data in the world in front of us, but how what quality it has actually. So how much completeness it is there, how much validity of, how can we validate those data, what is so unique about it, and how can we manage the risk of all these data. So that is what data quality is all about. So getting the data right. So how complete is your data set actually? What kind of business requirement you have. So do you have all the required data elements? You need to check that. And accuracy. Is the data an accurate representation of the element that you want actually? How accurate it is. So that's something you can check the data. Consistency. So is the data synchronized across your organization? Because it cannot be in different formats within the same organization. One data element cannot be represented in different ways actually. It has to be unique and consistent across the business, right? And then validity. And does the data fit in the defined range and whatever the expected values you have? And how unique it is actually. So you cannot have the duplicates of data. If you have duplicates of data, then it's going to be a problem. You need to have the data sets so unique. And integrity. So how connected can your data be traced and connected across the organization? How, for example, I have an account, and if my parents or my family has an account, how can I connect these family account actually? So what lineage it has got? So there has to be some data elements which can connect these related elements, related data actually. So that is about getting the data right. Okay. So this is one interesting pyramid: data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. So data is there everywhere, right? So to add more value to it, process data as information actually. And then comes the knowledge. When the information is there, so what information that you want to consume, that becomes the knowledge. And how do you implement your knowledge is the wisdom actually. So this is the pyramid, and now you know how the data, how the value goes here actually, and what has to be done at each and every level, so that you get the knowledge and wisdom out of it. But these two are quite critical because, whatever the data processing and things that you do, that's when you get the higher knowledge and wisdom. And I saw this quotes interesting in the net, that we are surrounded by data, but we are starved of insights actually. So analytics is knowledge, and knowledge is power. So we need to analyze things. We have the data, with all the data elements around us, we have the data, but for that we need knowledge. If we need knowledge, we need to do all the processing required, and that's the money now actually. Everything is free. Data is free for you. It's lying around actually. How are you going to operate on top of this actually? How are you going to work on top of it? That's where your knowledge comes in, and that's where the power is actually. With this, I think I conclude this logical end to this trends in data management. I can take up the questions maybe at the end, or I'll take the questions at the end actually. Will you go to the next slide, please? So this is on cloud technology, and how many of have got a feel of cloud in your daily basis actually? Do you? So can you think of anything which is there in the cloud which you are using on a daily basis? Just can anyone volunteer to? Gmail is one thing, you know that, right? Gmail is one thing which is there in the cloud, and YouTube is always, all the servers are there in the cloud. So these are few examples where data is there in the cloud and you are consuming what data is stored in the cloud, right? Yeah, so edge computing, I think we are revisiting the thing again. Yesterday, Sarah was mentioning about edge computing and what advantages it brings to you, because it's very close to the data source, and how it helps in the data source when it's very close. I think everything, the data is stored and processed at the edge level, and because of which the latency is very less, and it helps in the latency and the processing power since it's very close. So it was very interesting when I was reading about the New York City traffic management, because it's heavily heavily congested in the roads actually, and what they did is, across each and every plot they have an edge processing machine. Based on the vehicles they stand in front of your line, the crossing line, they identify how the traffic lights have to be operated actually. Based on that is how it gets the traffic is managed. So that close it is, and it's heavily used in traffic management and autonomous vehicles. So currently there are experiments in US where all the trucks are without any driverless vehicles are going on. So how this is done is through edge computing. So they have an edge server close by, and they figure it out where exactly the distance between the two vehicles and what are the sensor data that comes in around it. It gets processed, and that's how the vehicle is getting moved without any driver actually. And hospitals inpatient monitoring, which Sarah was mentioning about yesterday. So this is edge computing, which is a very interesting topic in the cloud, which is more relevant these days. And yeah, again, this AI and ML comes into the picture. So it's increased automation, so you don't less manual intervention, and you have, since we talked about data, there's large data sets everywhere actually. Data is there everywhere. How are we going to make meaning out of it? We need to use this automation thing and self-learning capabilities so that your models get enriched. And disaster recovery. Yeah, for example, if something happens for us, I think if you see, I think last month we had a great earthquake in Morocco. Around 2,000 people they just lost their lives. And all the businesses there, they have to come back again, otherwise they are lost actually. For the decades and for the generations, they have established a business, and suddenly you have zero. So how do we do it actually? So how do we do it in the sense you have to have, if there is a cloud space, if there is a cloud presence for those companies, they'll be storing all their DR data in a different zone, or somewhere in Asia actually, somewhere in Bombay they can store their data. Somewhere in Egypt they can store their data where the cost is less for them, or they'll figure out which data centers they can replicate the same data that they have, so that the next day they can still operate again. So that's the that's the biggest advantage that the cloud offers, just disaster recovery. Yeah, the next slide please. Yeah, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud solutions. I think you guys have a fair idea of what clouds. We have a public cloud where everyone gets access to. You have a private cloud within an enterprise, and yeah, so the combination of, and you have on-prem things as well. When I say on-premises, any company which have this physical servers sitting in their own data centers. Only when we just go to the public cloud, it's somewhere sitting in the providers, vendors data center. Somewhere Amazon cloud is the public, right? So multi-cloud is something different. For example, I talked about the bank, and so there are different applications within a bank, right? You have a credit card system, you have a loan processing system, and you have a current account and saving account system. And I have a better solution for current accounts and savings account, and the other person has got a better solution for credit card system. So that's how it is. So I offer, or I can say, for example, we have Amazon AWS, we have Google Cloud, we have an Azure, we have. I think the kind of, for example, Amazon is good at one particular operation. Their products are good at one particular functionality. So I'm going to buy Amazon Cloud for my current account operations actually. And I'm going to get Google Cloud for different operations. But I have to work together actually. These two operations have to talk together actually. So that's where this multi-cloud come into picture. So Google is good at storing the big data. They have a big table concept. So where all your data, complete data lakes are stored in Google big table. And for the rest of the thing, for example, serverless computing is there. For that you have AWS offerings actually. So when in the same organization, you can have multiple vendors, and how do you operate together? That's what this multi-cloud about, and that is quite prevalent these days. It also comes into cost factor as well actually. For something you can pay more, for something you can pay less. That you can have some compromises as well. And yeah, so banks and insurance companies showing the data they can consume from. When the different system comes into picture, I have the leverage to decide which is more convenient for me to operate with. And the next one is cloud security and resilience. Yeah, so we talked about the security and privacy, and cyber security is one of the most demanding area where everyone can look at it, we can just get familiarized with. And how are we going to ensure the cloud is secure? Because we have a lot of advantages. But when a lot of doubts are coming up how secure this data is stored, I need to be very convincing to my customers saying that, okay, the data that you're storing is really secure. I need to give that confidence to my customer. How am I going to do that? So that's where you have a MFA, which is multi-factor authentication. You have encryption, a lot of encryption algorithms have come today, and identity access management. You have a robust identity. IAM stands for Identity Access Management Control. Access control mechanisms you have, so that you can figure out who has to get what access to the data. And you should also classify your data. This is again quite important actually. So when the data is there, you need to figure out what data can be given to the public usage, what data is extremely only for my private usage, and what is restricted actually, right? I cannot give the personal details to everyone in the public, but I can share my every year's profit and loss details, or I can share the public disclosures to the whole community to look at this, how am I performing it. And restricted details, something like my own company rules and regulations, I don't want to share it outside, which is restricted. So this classification will help you who should be your target audience. So that is quite important. And yeah, the next one is cloud gaming. This is again a big area where cloud plays a major role. I think there's a lot of good, I think there's some interesting game today. What they do is they don't want to install the game in your laptop. So it's going to be, you're going to stream the data, and without any installation of the gaming module in your physical laptop or machine, everything is going to happen at the server level actually. All you need is a laptop and a connection, so that you can just like a player, you can just play sitting in front of your computer using the internet connectivity, and everything is taken care by the cloud processing and everything. Yeah, so this is cloud gaming. It's one big thing which is coming in the cloud area actually. Yeah, serverless computing. So this is again a very important topic. So for example, you're very good at coding. So you have all your, for example, if you have to do something, you can come up with all the codes for a e-com application. You need not worry about where exactly to place the cloud and all the physical logistics. You need not worry about it actually. So you have your code ready. Just go find a person who is offering this serverless computing. For example, AWS Lambda is there, and you just go and put the code there, and then that's going to take care of itself. So it gives a lot of flexibility to the developing community, so that you just go place your code and it gets processed, and the results are there. Ability to quickly build, deploy, and scale your cloud solutions. And these are again quite hot these days. Kubernetes, blockchain, and IoT. Kubernetes is something, if you have a big application and if you want to replicate the same application to handle multiple requests, they're just going to take a snapshot image of an application. They say it's called a container actually. They'll just containerize the application that you have built upon, and then they'll give access to the user community actually. And this can be done at the fraction of a second actually. So it's called containerization of applications, and the platform that manages this is called Docker. So it's a big area by itself, and all this is possible only because of your cloud technology. You can just scale the value of processing and other stuff. And blockchain, again, this is a distributed ledger technology where your processing happens at the distributed level actually. Using cloud computing. So we know the Bitcoin. I think everyone, the whole the young generation is into the cryptocurrencies. Actually, they want to make more money. So how is this getting processed actually? So that's again using the blockchain technology. Actually. So this is again is going to come up in a very big basis. How the data is getting processed not at one single place, but in the distributed layer actually. So tokens is one thing, so that they will try to synchronize it and then just get things done. And finally, it's IoT devices, which you are familiarized with, and you have a lot of sensors available now, cheap sensors available now. Whatever the data that we collect, how are we going to process at the server level, and how are we going to make use with your applications? Like edge computing is one thing which works closely with IoT devices. And the other thing is low-code, no-code cloud services. So yeah, so people are not much bothered about big length codes. So there's a lot of platforms where you don't need to code at all, but still you can develop an application. So that is possible with a very less amount of time. You can just come up with lots of applications with where the demand is there actually. So something like Zoho Creator has done this, and Salesforce Lightning has done that, where you just need not spend anything. All you need to just go use that application, configure a few things, and just get the output of it. Yeah, this is sovereign cloud. I think it talks about the data privacy and the borders. Why you should have all your servers within the country, right? So it's mainly with the data privacy laws so that the organizations, they have all their clouds within the regulatory compliance actually. So there is a governing body to take care of what data, where exactly the servers have to be there, so that the data is not misused. So ensures all the data, including the metadata, stays on the same soil, same country, and prevents foreign access to the data. So this is Sovereign Cloud, which is getting a lot of traction these days. And something which is aligned to that is Government Cloud actually. So most of the governments, they are taking all their data to the cloud now these days. And because there's a lot of agencies around, there's a lot of ministries around, and different ministries have different applications, and it's all scattered. But they need to have everything in one single place so that it reaches your common man. What are the schemes that they give today? If it has to go and access to the common man in the fraction of a second, everything has to be in place the way we wanted it. That's how the efficiency of any program that they announce will happen. So this Government Cloud is something which is again taking a lot of traction. And one interesting thing which I was noticing was, I think in the Ukraine, we have a war going on, right? So what happened is, I think the Ukrainian government, I think the Russians were trying to destroy the data centers of the Ukraine. They don't want they want to destabilize the country. So what the government did is, they just took all the data, government data, all the tax data, all the property data, everything else. Any kind of a data which they have, which the government operates, the information they have, they're putting into a single solid state devices, like a tractor comes or a lorry comes, there's a big storage box. They'll just keep putting the data into the box. They took all the data to a Poland, it's a close by bordering country. They took all the data to the bordering country and they just uploaded it to the Amazon. And today, the education is happening through Amazon Web Services. The whole country is operating in the cloud. So they're making use of the government cloud very efficiently, so that even at the crisis situation today, they're able to manage things seamlessly and without much issues. Yeah, let's take question time. If we would have new knowledge, we will get a whole lot of new questions. I'm looking forward to the questions from you now. Something got transferred from this place to this place. Any questions, please? Do you have any questions? Do you have a fair idea of how data is getting managed? So what did you understand as a presentation? That's not the right question, is it?
Sir, BAS, infrastructure as a service, data, BAS,
So blockchain as a service.
Blockchain
as a service.
One of the services of cloud.
Cloud, yeah, correct. So because when we deploy applications using the blockchain technology, so the companies may not develop everything from the scratch. So they have a service which is just built in. So as a consumer, I can just use it and I can try to deploy it for my purposes. Just like a software as a service.
Yes.
It's kind of a way. See, Elastic Cloud, இதுக்கு difference கேக்குறீங்க?
Normal cloud computing elastic cloud.
See, cloud அப்படினாலே வந்து you have elasticity. And that's a property of your cloud computing. So when we talk about elastic, I think it's just the same name. There's no difference between these two. So when we say it's an elastic cloud, you can increase the compute power actually. One thing, when we have RDMAS, sales request, so there's a lot of traffic comes into they're coming and asking, you need you need to service them, right, in online. So that time we need a lot of compute power and a lot of, so that you can help them out as quickly as possible. So you'll add CPU processing power, they increase pretty quick. So once the offer period ends in, you don't want those things to sit idle. because it's not going to use that. So you bring that servers down. So that's expansion and contraction of the compute power based on your demand, based on the business that demands, right? That's what it's all about, elasticity.
Sir, one question from YouTube participant. How to do no code in processing? How to do no code in processing, data processing?
Yeah, so we have a no-code tools available online actually. So there's a lot of no-code tools are there. So which will help them out to just, you just have to feed in the data and it is going to do the tools. For example, I think Google Dialogflow is one thing, no-code thing, where you can create a chatbot all by yourself, not by writing any lines of code to it.
Sir, another question. How to store blockchain data in cloud? How to store blockchain data?
Yeah, so blockchain is a distributed system, right? It's going to process the data. So blockchain by itself is operating in the cloud server actually across different places. And storage is something that you have the compute power and the database is always going to be together, but somewhere in the cloud. For example, if I'm using, for example, let's take Citibank actually. Citibank is something is there and they have their data center here and they have data center in US or data center in Japan or Australia. And they cannot have one single centralized machine where everything is getting processed. So the concept by itself, the blockchain is a distributed processing. So it just gets processed the place where it's sitting, and then it tries to synchronize the data using the tokens that it has actually. Distributed ledger is what the whole thing is about.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one question from Gomadi Nayagam. How AWS Lambda is working?
Yeah, AWS Lambda is a serverless function. AWS Lambda is an offering from Amazon. It's a serverless computing. So yeah, it's an interesting question actually. So what they do is, yeah, so they, as a developer, I don't need to figure out, I'm writing a code for some functionality. For example, I have to come up with an e-commerce site or something, I have it. But I just have to figure out where exactly do I need to post my server, what data has to be done, all those things are not required. I can just go to the AWS Lambda and say that this is the functions or these are the modules that I have written. And if you just give them, they are going to take care of all my physical servers and servers that I am using.
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any doubt, please raise your hand.
Fine, sir. சார் இப்போ நீங்கள் க்ளவுட் செக்யூரிட்டி பற்றி சொன்னீங்களே, அதில் வந்து ஐஏஎம் இந்த எம்எஃப்ஏன்னு இருக்கிற சார் அதுக்கு மீனிங் என்ன சார்?
Yeah, so MFA is multi-factor authentication. So for example, when you log into in any enterprise portal, for example, if you have what it does is it will send out OTP, right? OTP they keep sending you, right? That's a two-factor authentication. So when you just log in, they need to authorize are you a legitimate user or not? Are you the right user or not? So they'll send you an OTP to your mobile, and when you send that OTP, when you put the numbers in your thing, then they'll know that okay, this is the right guy whom I'm sending the OTP to. So that's a two-factor authentication. And similarly, if there were multiple ways to figure out if you are the right person, then multi-factor authentication. They ask in few bank transactions, they ask you, they have set up questions that you must have entered. So which is the school name that you have studied lastly, and which what is the place of birth, who is your friend's favorite sport or something like that. They keep asking you, right? When you give the right answers that you given to the system, at the first place, then they know that okay, you got the right answer. So that the third person will not know what answers you have given first time. That's an MFA. IAM is Identity Access Management. So it's all about when there's a lot of users in your whole business. So each user, they have their own roles to do actually. So for this role, they you don't need to give access to the whole entire application. You can restrict them saying that this is the data that you want to access. So it's kind of a grant privileges in RP if you're familiar about giving a grant only to the select class actually, to this particular user. So that's how.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? There's a lot of algorithms, the data is getting stored in the data. So the 256-bit encryption is one thing which WhatsApp is using it. And you have AES algorithm, AES encryption algorithm. So there's a lot of latest algorithms wherein the intruder cannot come and hack your messages actually. So you'll generate some tokens at the start, at the initial point where the data is getting transferred, and you will generate some tokens at the end point actually. And only if these two has to match. There is a mechanism which will ensure that the data you gave at the starting point and the data you gave at the end point. So that's how the encryption works. So highest sophisticated encryption these days, which will ensure that your data is safe. Questions from secondary students? I think if you have any questions, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Good morning to all. I am very happy to say thank you to all, and I express my hearty thank you to our seniors, Mr. Kumar Narayan and Mr. Rajesh Kumar Raja for accepting our invitation we had and spending our valuable time with us. And our thanks to our HOD ma'am and staff members for always supporting our and guiding us. Once again, I thank you and all present here.